George Galloway on LBC.
Iain Duncan Smith is one of the richest men ever to sit in Parliament, largely through fortuitous and no doubt love-filled marriage. But he hunts the poor and the afflicted with such a vengeance that actually I begin to wonder if he's all there, as we say in Scotland. When I saw him pumping the air in Parliament at yet another attack on the poor by George Osborne, I wondered as to his sanity.
The new national living wage will be compulsory. Working people aged 25 and over will receive it. It will start next April at the rate of £7.20. The Low Pay Commission will recommend future rises that achieve the government's objective of reaching 6% of median earnings by 2020.
Well, he's been caught. His department are forgers, fabricators, and me and Tom Swarbrick have been looking further into it. It's going to be an interesting hour. IDS, tune in now. Yes, the DWP admits making up quotes by, quote, benefit claimants, saying that sanctions helped them. Like masochists they were, thanking Iain Duncan Smith for the lashes that they had just received, except they weren't. They weren't real. Neither the photograph nor the quotations were real. And it's come to something, you know, because if a reporter on a newspaper was found doing that, they'd already be sacked and be out the door. Pulitzer Prize winners have been sacked for exactly that crime. Orwell Prize winners in England have been sacked for exactly that. Even Boris Johnson, if we can mention him in such company, was once sacked for that. But the DWP expects us to simply overlook the parade of bogus benefit claimants bogusly praising the department for punishing them. Now, Tom Swarbrick is a young man, but he is a razor-sharp reporter. He's our senior reporter, and he's joining me in the studio now. Tom, you've been looking further into this. What can you tell us?
Well, this has all come, as you say, from this Freedom of Information request from the website Welfare Weekly, who I think we all need to doff our caps to, frankly, for putting in that FOI originally. These are relating to two quotes from two people, Sarah and Zach, two people apparently on sickness benefits. They weren't real. Their photos were stock photos. Their claims that they were pleased that they did their CV after having benefits removed were made up. The whole thing, the department says, was done for illustrative purposes only. And the response to that information, to that Freedom of Information request being returned, has been absolutely massive. MENCAP, the disability charity, has called it unacceptable. Stephen Timms, Labour's acting Shadow Work and Pensions Secretary, says the only way Iain Duncan Smith can find backers for his sanctions regime is by inventing them. And Twitter has borne the hashtag fake DWP stories, in which one man called Walter White says, "I turned my terminal illness into a business venture. Being classed fit for work despite having had lung cancer really helped my crystal meth business take off." If you haven't seen Breaking Bad, that will be rather lost on you. To be serious for a moment, it is precisely this kind of idiocy, hypocrisy, skullduggery, deception that makes the Freedom of Information Act so valuable and necessary. The government, though, is currently embarking on a review of the Freedom of Information Act, overseen by those thought to be largely hostile to it, and in what many are saying is going to be a watering down of that act to potentially avoid situations like this one.
Well, you bet Tony Blair said it was his biggest regret of his 10 years in Downing Street that he introduced this Freedom of Information Act, and the government is committed to watering it down.
I think Jack Straw is one of those people who are sitting on the review panel of the Freedom of Information Act.
As what? As a private citizen?
He is absolutely no fan of it.
No, indeed, because it's people like Jack Straw, Tony Blair, and now Iain Duncan Smith who have most to lose from public access to government activities. It is a remarkable story, and a kind of almost prima facie, it is absurd that someone would lend their picture and their quote to the DWP to thank them for punishing them. I mean, these sanctions are serious business. People have been sanctioned for having a heart attack and not being able to turn up for their appointment with their, it's a great American phrase, their jobs coach. The DWP, a jobs coach. But you're looking further into this. You're digging now, aren't you?
Yeah, and I think a lot of people will be, because this is, again, a story which has generated massive reaction. You know, in terms of political scandals, it's not a Watergate, it's no expenses, but it is, I think, absolutely shocking to most people that this kind of practice can go on and can be caught out. So absolutely we are looking in and watch this space is all I'm going to say.
Yeah, well, when you're on a story, I always watch the space. We've had the fake, dodgy dossier, which of course was on a much more serious issue, where the internet floor was swept and a thesis produced as if it were government intelligence to help drive us towards war. Now we've got the DWP inventing, quote, I mean, if it's for illustrative purposes, why didn't they say so? They could have said, as any company in the advertising business knows, these are not real people. These pictures and quotes are for illustrative purposes only.
And they say that they have removed now those testimonies and photos to, quote, avoid any confusion, which makes you wonder why they put them up in the first place, if there were any confusion potentially available to those people.
Unless they wanted to confuse. What would be interesting, now, even you won't be able to do this, at least not in the next hour and a half, but if we could find the people whose stock photos they are...
Well, that's the next bit of this. That's got to be there's some enterprising hack somewhere who has found Sarah.
Well, it is August. Yeah. There's not much else for a lot of hacks to do. Thanks very much for that. 0345 6060 973. We'll talk to you again later if you get anything more. No pressure. 84850 is the text number. You can tweet me, hashtag Galloway on LBC. And the question is, do benefits sanctions work? And should Iain Duncan Smith now face his own sanctions? I believe he should. I believe he should be put in a sackcloth in ashes or in the stocks in a market town somewhere. After all, he's been caught fibbing. Yvonne is in Islington. Let's hear from her. Yvonne, welcome.
Good afternoon. Pleasure to talk to you, young man.
Thank you.
I'll be very quick. Iain Duncan Smith also had those job clubs that he was doing, so people would get sanctioned if they did not attend. And a friend of mine, I've said it before, a friend of mine went to them and he was told to use up his time by reading a newspaper, find something to do. And these were meant to be clubs that were meant to find people work and give them something constructive to do. None of this happened. And also, he was told off the record by one of the people that they were getting commission for everyone they sanctioned. So it just makes a whole mockery of this trying to get people into work. And
they put in such effort to dragoon the lame and the sick, when, of course, for a very long time, it's picking up slightly now, there were no jobs for people to get. However you hunted them, however many people you turned out of their sick beds, there were no jobs.
Exactly. And also, when people want to go and do courses, you're told you can't do a course because you're on job seekers' allowance. Or if you wanted to start a business, they'll say, we give you £1,000. £1,000 can't start a business, but once you get that £1,000, you cannot go back and sign on.
That's
all
right.
All these little traps. And they seem to forget the little amount of money they give these people. They ask people to carry a pail of full water with a hole in it to the other side of the road and expect them to pay everything out of that pail, which is leaking and leaking and leaking.
Very well said, Yvonne. Let's go to Anna in Swiss Cottage. She was sanctioned. Tell me about it, Anna.
Oh, hello, George. Yes, I was sanctioned. I lost consciousness. I have cerebral palsy, used an electric wheelchair, wanted to find a job. They do quotas. I don't know whether you know this, but you know this now, that DWP are actually doing quotas because the more people that they can actually sanction, the better pay that the people who work in these job centres get paid.
Let me run this past the nation again, Anna. You have cerebral palsy, and you're in an electronic wheelchair. And Iain Duncan Smith sanctioned you. What was the sanction?
Well, I lost money, reduced money it was.
And for what? What was your offence?
Well, the thing is, I actually lost consciousness. I've got very low hemoglobin. I've got other health conditions, and I was unconscious. So if I was unconscious, I actually collapsed. So I couldn't actually attend any interview anyway. It happened on the day that I was supposed to have the interview for a job. And
what
so if you
is wrong with you, Iain Duncan Smith? You're supposed to be a Christian man. You're supposed to be a member of Parliament. And you punished a girl with cerebral palsy and other conditions in an electronic wheelchair for not going to a job interview because she was unconscious. What is wrong with you, Iain Duncan Smith? I want to know, do benefit sanctions work? Are they justified? Or should Iain Duncan Smith now face his own sanctions?
This is LBC with George Galloway.
I need your calls on this subject. Do benefit sanctions work? Are they justified? Should Iain Duncan Smith now face his own sanctions now that his department have been unmasked, I think we can say. At least Dick Turpin wore a mask, but they are being unmasked as people who are not just robbing the poor and the sick blind, but lying about it, fabricating quotations and pictures, purporting to be grateful benefit claimants who are so happy that they were lashed by Iain Duncan Smith, one of the richest men ever to sit in Parliament. Smug? Much? Here's Annie in Lancashire. Go ahead, Annie.
Good morning, George.
Morning.
What I wanted to say was, I'm severely disabled myself, and I have been for the last 20 years, and been getting worse, really, and I'm bedbound most of the time now. And I've noticed that, over the last 20 years, successive governments, not just this one, but even New Labour as well, have been gradually demonising people on benefits, and particularly disabled people, because we're all malingerers and scroungers and we're not really ill. And so that once the public believe that, then they can just start rolling back the welfare state, which they have been doing. And I'm absolutely sure that sanctions don't work, but I don't think really that's what sanctions are about. I think sanctions are. I think a lot of it is propaganda, especially these leaflets. I mean, I certainly wouldn't be impressed if I got one through the door. It'd be ripped up and straight in the bin. So I think those leaflets are for the general public.
Well, they're for the simple-minded, to turn the simple-minded against disabled people. To get them thinking that they're malingerers, that they are swinging the lead, that they are shirkers, dodgers, so that they can drive down the public expenditure bill. That's the purpose of them, and that's the same for other issues, like immigration, like migrants at the tunnel in Calais, painted as a biblical swarm, when in fact, the last time I looked, there were precisely 140 outside the Channel Tunnel in Calais. But that's another matter. Annie, thanks for the call. Mike is in Chorley. I thought the earlier call couldn't be bettered or worst, but this one does. Mike, tell us.
Yes, George. What it was, I'd been made redundant at the age of 60 in October. My father died in early November. I was due to go to the job centre for a meeting, and I told them that I couldn't attend as I was sorting out my father's funeral arrangements. And the operator at the other end said, well, you do realise this could have an effect on your allowances. I was absolutely disgusted.
So let me get this right. Your father, God rest him, was scarcely cold.
Correct.
Was unburied.
correct.
You were arranging his funeral, and they threatened to take your benefits away because you rang up and said you couldn't attend a meeting that day.
That's correct.
What kind of people are they?
That day, I had to visit the funeral directors, and I had to visit the registrar.
Wow.
And the operator, totally cold, no feeling whatsoever, said, well, if you don't come to attend the meeting, it could have an effect on your allowances.
Well, I hope he's listening, and I hope he's ashamed of himself. Mike in Chorley. Here's Michael in Marylebone. Go ahead, Michael.
Yeah, hello, George. It's just everybody who deserves benefits should get them, and good luck to them. And I think most of the country agree with that.
Well, there we had a man who was made redundant at 60 through no fault of his own. Redundancy is redundancy. I would have thought he was worth the benefits, and certainly worth it to allow him to bury his father before calling him into the office, no?
Yeah, I agree with all that 100%, and I think most decent people do. But I think it ilks people when I know it's not a great amount, but the ones who cheat should be hammered. Because they are sponging, not of us who travel every day to work and work. They're cheating also the people who deserve it. And I think this is what annoys people, and they look on people, they look on the cheats as everybody, but it's not. And I think the cheat should be hammered.
I agree. I'm all for hammering cheats, Michael. Now, if we're talking cheats, why don't we have a dedicated phone line? Why don't we advertise it on the side of bus shelters? Do you know a tax cheat? Do you know a rich man who's pretending that his wife, based in Monaco, is running his chain of high street stores? Do you know a rich person that's dodging what he should be paying? Call, etc., etc. You with me on that?
I think I agree with that, because I think most people watch Crime Watch so they can grass somebody up.
I'm all for reporting cheats, and I wish we put more effort in to unmasking the cheats that really cost us. I mean, really. I'm not talking about tuppence halfpenny in a job seeker's allowance claim. I'm talking about millions, scores of millions, hundreds of millions avoided in tax. Do you think we can't afford these benefits? Do you think sanctions are needed to keep people in line? If you disagree with me that this is nothing more than rabble-rousing, call me. James is in Wales. Let's hear from him. Go ahead, James.
Hello.
Yes, go ahead.
How are you, George?
By the grace of God, I'm good. Go ahead.
No, I was unemployed for quite a number of years, and I was a nurse in London and relocated to South Wales, where the lovely Welsh government put me on loads of courses and probably spent a lot of money not getting people into unemployment.
That's right. I mean, the cost of all this circus has not even been calculated in this discussion so far.
And they built this lovely place down in Cardiff, which is, brilliant for them. But it just seems that they should be spending their money on more tips, actually getting people back into employment instead of criticising CVs, as we've seen on the little campaign from somebody from Whitehall.
Indeed. Thanks for the call. Desi is in Hammersmith. Let's hear.
Oh, hello there, George. Thanks for taking my call.
Welcome.
And I'm sorry that for the first time it's got to be on such an upsetting subject. But instead of all these bogus figures, why can't they busy themselves with funding real homes, jobs, childcare, training? I've worked in social services for 41 years, and I've just never known it so bad for children, families, and even staff. They said there's 3 generations on family on the dole. That's not true. Those families have been out with us on anti-austerity marches in pouring rain, freezing cold. I'm sure you've witnessed it as well. And in a school that I was working, 2 little girls gave me their bangles to send to the gold people shop. A little boy was eating half of his packed lunch to save money for his mum. Co-workers selling their clothes for 40p a kilo. They're all low-wage earners, super gluing their teeth in, wearing Poundland glasses. I mean, it's just not on. And, you know, with all these real things, why can't they see it? If you've got time to do something bad, can't you spend a little time on doing something good? It's just so upsetting. I just hope that we have some really, really happy news that Jeremy Corbyn for PM quickly, please.
Well, I'm with you on all of that. I'm quite moved, actually, by your call. You and I need to talk off the air because you hit the bullseye with that call. I think this is a multi-layered issue. These benefit sanctions don't work. No. They are being pursued at the expense of the poorest and the weakest and the most vulnerable and the lamest people. And we've had some of them on the line. We had a woman who's been bedbound for 20 years. We had a woman with cerebral palsy and who goes around, when she can get around, in an electronic wheelchair. Now, what is the earthly point? Never mind the earthly morality. What is the earthly point about hunting such people out to job clubs and job opportunities? Their chances of landing a job are vanishingly small. And your point is, why don't we spend that money and that Whitehall effort into actually getting jobs for people who can do them?
Yes, I mean, you know, it's easy to say, go and get a job, but, you know, I'm a carer for my mum, so I'm working around that. Plus, I've not been well myself. I'm still working. We are trying to help ourselves, and you know, if you want someone to do that, especially someone with a child, look at the price of the childcare. You know, if you haven't provided proper training, they just closed everything down. If you don't retrain and help people, how can they get the money? Of course, you know, we all need a helping hand. Nobody's saying, you know, but I know myself, the mums come to the back to work clubs, they're so excited, they're learning languages, they're doing everything, and then what happens? They go out, they get a slap in the face because they just don't get the wages to meet the childcare. And some employers are very good and they understand. But what they say is, oh, we have to take out your hour for your break or your coffee break. And then it puts your hours back. So it's just little things like that. That's small to us, but, you know, sometimes a pound is a hell of a lot.
Well, of course, when we talk sanctions, let's call a spade. We're talking about taking money from already very poor people, aren't we?
Yes. And this is what it is. You know, I mean, what do you want them to do? I mean, you know, how much slower can you go? We used to, like, if you were eating at Waitrose, now you're going to all the other shops like Lidl and Aldi, or you're going to any shop where you can pick up. Two old people the other day bought 7 £1 dinners in Iceland that they were going to share between the two of them. It's just, you know, if I had the money and I could make away paper money, I'd do it, you know, and we were all trying to help. And you just get pushed back. And then they wonder why, you know, our young people are going into all different things. They're doing things they shouldn't. They just tell me, but Desi, we've got no hope. There's no hope out there.
Well, thanks for that, Desi. There is some hope, and it's on the horizon, and you referred to it earlier. But you made the whole case, at least for me. What about you?
This is LBC, leading Britain's conversation with George Galloway.
Are the acronyms IDS and DWP the most hated in Britain? I think they possibly are. And that won't have improved with the revelation in the media this morning that the DWP has admitted making up quotes by benefit claimants saying that sanctions helped them. The pain, you see, they enjoyed it. Really. 0345 6060 973. I'm asking, do you think we can't afford these benefits? Do you think sanctions are needed to keep people in line? If you disagree with me that this is nothing more than vulgar rabble-rousing, call me on 0345 6060 973. Now, let's see. Dean in Brent Cross thinks all benefits should be scrapped. Maybe they've just let him out for a couple of days, or maybe he's just having a laugh. Let's hear which. Go ahead, Dean.
Hello, George.
Yes.
I'll probably, after I will express my point, I'll make my point, I'll become one of the most hated immigrants in the country. I think, George, I think you as a generation and the previous one and the next one, you guys, you grew up in a time when money existed. Now money does not exist anymore, and you have no idea. But what you're doing right now, you're going to destroy the next generation because we have to pay the debt, not you. We have to pay the debt. So I think you should wake up, guys, and you should say, you know what? Let's cut from the benefits. Let's cut them. Let's crop them, for goodness sake. Let's keep them only for disabled. Yeah, I think disabled people, they should be entitled for everything. House for free, bills paid by the government. Disabled people should be entitled to everything. But no. When you said that people are poor, what they are poor for, when I left my country, I'm from a very poor country, Romania. I came here with £20 on my bank, on my pocket, and now I earn over £40,000. When I used to live in London, because I couldn't find a proper job, a better job, I left London and now I live in a town. So I moved. When I have to move, I have to move. That's the point. So I think you guys, you should wake up, because most of your callers, not just today, but times, they were parents, or not necessarily parents, but people over 30s, and they were all complaining, which is very bad, because they should wake up. They say, oh, you know what? When we were young, were money. Now money does not exist anymore. It's like, George, it's like you having a credit card, and spending the last penny, and you say, you know what? Oh, I'm bankrupt. That's ridiculous. That's ridiculous. I think it's bad what you're doing right now. I think it's bad because you blame the government because they try to do something good for the next generation. You blame the government because they want to cut benefits for people under 25. What they should have benefits for? Why? Are they disabled? No. Then go to work.
Well, Dean, I'm quite offended, actually, by your gall. You've come here from Romania, and you say that you now earn £40,000 a year, and you condemn the society and the social and moral fabric of the society to which you've come and from which you are, according to you, now richly benefiting from. You see, we in this country believe that somebody in a wheelchair with cerebral palsy should be supported by the taxpayer. We believe that people who've worked all their lives, including in the wartime generation, keeping the home fires burning or actually putting their bodies in the line, on the line, to defend the society and the morality that we believed in, should be looked after. They should get benefits, they should get pensions, and they should get other benefits to supplement their pensions. They should get a TV license, free, for example. We believe in these things. And we believe that there shouldn't be a need for people to be begging on the streets, that children have no responsibility for the misfortune or the misbehavior of their parents, that we have an obligation. You see, some of us don't just believe in me and now, we believe in us and always. We believe that we are all diminished when others are diminished. That's just the British way. And maybe if you stay here long enough, you'll pick it up. Susie in Humberside, she's on next. Go ahead, Susie.
Yeah, a friend of mine who was seriously injured at work. Within 1 month, she's been sent to see one of the top doctors in the world for traumatic injuries who assessed all the injuries and how it will affect her the rest of her life. Because it's a very serious incident at work. Within the same month, a nurse, for I think you call it Maximus now, was declared as perfectly able to work, has not a thing wrong with her at all, there's no injuries whatsoever. They've immediately taken away all the benefits, including the housing benefit. Now, how do you work that one out?
Well, that's the new Britain that people chose, I'm afraid. Matt is in Forest Gate on the same subject. Go ahead, Matt.
Hello, yeah. I was quite offended by that gentleman who was talking about...
You and me both, mate. You and me both.
I think at the end of the day, I think it's quite an insult that what he said, because at the end of the day, Britain has always been a very understanding country where we look after everybody that we could possibly do, and that is not what that's not what's happening in this country at the present moment. It's causing an uproar, and the reason why our benefits is suffering is because when I would say Tony Blair has allowed the EU to be able to join our great country and everything else. It's opened the tin of worms with the benefit and the national health and the doctors. It's overpopulated our system.
Well, there's more of us living in the EU than there are people from the EU living here. You do know that, Matt, yeah?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
But the thing is the problem we have is people over other countries are actually using our benefit over here because they're allowed to.
Actually, that's not even true.
That is because it's been. I've known it. I've actually seen it and known it.
Well, whatever you've seen and known, I'm telling you that it's not true. That the migrants have a net contribution to the British economy of £5 billion. In other words, let me spell that out. The migrants here are putting in £5 billion a year more than they're taking out.
Well, then why is our system being drained?
It's being drained because of lack of funds. It's being drained because of lack of funds, Matt. I think you need to read a bit more widely. Simon is in Barnsley. Let's hear from him.
Hey, good morning, George.
Morning, sir.
I just wanted to give you my experience dealing with the job centre and the whole system, really. I just think it's totally unfit for purpose now. I left school at 16. I worked ever since then, and unfortunately, when I was 42 years ago, I was unemployed for a period. Every now and again, you get an interview where your job advisor asks you what you're doing to find work and things like that. On the morning that I was due for this interview, I went into the job centre and I saw a job that I wanted to apply for. Now, when I went up for my interview, I told the woman that I needed to use the phone to apply for this job, and she said, "You can't do that because this 2-hour interview is for me to check up that you're looking for work."
Rather than actually help you to apply for a job right there and then.
Yeah, I said, well, I thought the whole point of me being here was to find work. I found work, and you're not letting me use the phone in the 2 hours. So I was sanctioned for that.
Oh, my goodness. Thanks for that, Simon. Michelle is in Cardiff. Go ahead, Michelle.
Yeah, I just want to say, George, I don't agree with the sanctions at all. And I'm working on low wages. I'm a school cleaner. And when I used to go down the dole in Cardiff, no kidding, the women who work in the job centre, absolute, I've got to say it, absolute bitches. They'll call you a liar to your face. You're not looking for work as far as they're concerned. They'll stop your benefits. You know, you go to the job club and they'll say, you know, your CV got to stand out. I said, this employer, you know, it's in the employers can pick and choose who they want. It makes no difference if my CV is gold-plated. Unless they want me, it suits them, I can't get the job.
No, I think, I agree with you that the attitude of some, maybe many, job centre staff leaves a lot to be desired. But it's not true that your CV doesn't matter. It does.
Listen, I'm 56. I go for all the jobs, apply for everything. A lot of the times, they never even bothered applying. You know, the employers never bothered replying back to me saying, yeah, thanks for your letter, nothing. You go down the job centre, you haven't looked for this job. Yes, I have. No one replies. They just call you a liar to your face because, you know, as far as they're concerned, all you want to do, they think, when you're on the dole, you want to sit in the house all day, watching Jeremy Kyle, and I assume everybody's selling drugs. I'm not selling drugs.
No, you're working as a school cleaner. Michelle, in Cardiff. Thanks for that. LV is a gypsy who thinks benefit sanctions work. People have children willy-nilly these days, says LV, describing themselves as a gypsy, which is a phrase I don't normally use.
This is LBC with George Galloway.
We're talking about benefit sanctions and the DWP. LV in Huntingdon thinks that the sanctions work and that people have children willy-nilly these days. Better tell me why, LV.
Well, I know for a fact many years ago one woman, she had a large family, and she told not just me but everybody, that every time one of her children came off of child benefits, she had another baby ready to go on, which a lot of them seem to do these days. And getting back to myself, like I said, we worked to keep my 4 children, what I had. I didn't go down social and sit and ask what box I tick next to get more money. People want children, let them keep them by all means, but do not let the state have to end up paying for them. And as for children starving these days, I cannot understand where people are coming from on that tactic.
Now, you've got children, yeah?
Well, they're all grown up now, yeah, they're all grown up.
How many did you have?
I had 4.
Okay, do you know that every one of them got child benefit, or family allowance as it possibly was then? Do you know that every one of them got educated free at primary school and at secondary school? You know that, yeah? You know that these are benefits, yeah? You know that these are taxpayer-funded benefits. I hope none of them were ever ill, but if they were, they went to a National Health Service, which is a benefit, a taxpayer-funded benefit. You know that, yeah?
I'm going to stop you there, George. I was brought up in a family, I'm going back to my mother and father now, and my aunts and uncles. Whenever we went to see a doctor or we required a doctor, we paid.
Well, they must be very, very old, because the National Health Service was brought in 1945.
No, they were still paying because they wanted to pay when I was going to school.
So your aunts and uncles paid for the health care they got, even though the National Health Service had been brought in?
Yes, and they paid for the health care their children needed, the likes of me and my cousins, yes.
Through private health insurance?
Well, yes.
They must have been very wealthy. What were they doing?
They were working to keep themselves and not to be a burden
and they didn't want to use the health service. They preferred to pay for it.
They preferred to pay for it, yes.
Remarkable. Remarkable. Thanks for that, Elvie. Sandra is in Bromley. Let's hear from her.
Hello there.
Hi.
Hi. I just want to talk about the DWP. Unfortunately, I had to claim due to having an injury to my back, but was later on investigated by them, a complete farce, as they didn't document my benefits properly and all the correspondence that they'd asked for, telling me that I was under an investigation. A few weeks ago, it was literally thrown out. They apologised to me profusely for hounding me for over 9 months, I believe it's been, which has now affected my health, my general confidence. It's absolutely disgusting how they're allowed to get away with something like that.
Well, instead of hunting someone in Bromley, they'd have been better standing around in the city of London. They'd actually have found far more malfeasance going on. Barry is in Norwood. Go ahead, Barry. Barry, you're on the air.
Moment. Yeah. Right. Now, hello, can you hear me?
I can, and so can the country.
Yeah, right. All right, excellent. Right, now, I just don't understand what's people's problems. They seem to think that they don't require insurance policies, so they're quite happy to lose all the support that has been hard fought for a couple of 100 years, essentially. They want to give up all their rights. They don't want rights at work. They don't want support when they're down and when they're out. They don't want support for their family and their children. They don't want their children to have a future, it seems, because all of these networks that are available have been put there so that we as people can benefit as a country, and we have benefited greatly for them. I've been in sanctioned. I work quite happily for services in the local authorities, and I was sanctioned because I had a brain tumour, and they thought that that's not enough. That's not good enough to be out of work, you know? So they bullied me back into work well before my time, causing me to hemorrhage. Now, that is not a support system. That is the country caving in on itself. That's what I can see. And that's why we need people like you back in the Labour Party, George.
Well, Barry, thanks for that. They expelled me, so they'll have to rescind that expulsion. That's the only way that could happen. But the more important point that you make is a good one. Through false consciousness, you can persuade people to cut their own throats. You could persuade people to cut their own families' throats. And we've had some examples of that. today. Now, Theo Usherwood is our wise young LBC political editor. He'll tell us why some people were sanctioned.
Yes, good morning, George. I've just been on the phone to the DWP just to ask them exactly what these so-called case studies, these leaflets that appeared online, pertain to, what they related to, and they go back. They're trying to provide an illustrative example of something called the claimant commitment, which was introduced by the DWP back towards the end of 2013. And that commitment, job seekers, anybody looking for a job, would have to sign up to in order to receive their benefits. And there were many measures within those commitments, but one of them includes writing up a CV, a personal statement about what you'll do to find a job, and also a commitment to let your work coach know if you're going to miss an appointment. And that's, if you read through the actual case studies, Sarah talks about the fact that she had to update her CV in order that she didn't lose her benefits. And Zach said,
except she didn't because she's not really Sarah, and she didn't really say that.
Yes, and then Zach said, he'd phone in ahead if he was going to miss his appointment, and therefore avoid being sanctioned. I've got a statement, we've probably heard it before from the DWP, saying that the case studies were used for illustrative purposes to help people understand how the benefit system works. They're based on conversations our staff have had with claimants, and they've now been removed to avoid any confusion. But that's what it related to, was this claimant commitment that was introduced by the government, that even the DWP spokesman I spoke to said, some people would say was much more stringent than previous measures that were introduced.
Well, we heard one, Theo, a man whose father was lying dead in his coffin but not yet buried, who called up and said that he was arranging his father's funeral that day and couldn't come to the meeting, and they warned him that it would cost him sanction.
Yes, and it depends, from the conversation I've had, it depends how much notice is given. So it's harsh, but they would say that in individual cases that they would look at those on their basis, but it depends very much on those individual cases. But it's about this. These leaflets were about trying to inform people, the DWP says, so that they're aware of the changes, because, of course, there are stricter or more stringent rules now in place.
Fair and balanced, that's us. Fair and balanced. Now, can I get one more call in? Yeah, I've got a chance. Let's hear from Dave in Bristol.
How are you, okay?
By the grace of God, I'm good, and I'm enjoying things. I hope you are.
I am. It's lovely listening to your docile tones on a rainy Wednesday lunchtime.
Thank you.
My point was, basically, I run a local business, and I'm currently recruiting. I think the problem it does lie with the job centre. I don't think benefits are an issue. Benefits are there to help people that need them, pure and simple. And it's the minority that always get the blame. The majority that always get the blame for the minorities' poor actions. The problem you've got is you've got a layer from the job centre of recruitment companies all taking basically a cut from that original basic salary, and it's very difficult to recruit. If you go down to the job centre, when I was young and I was looking for work, it used to have all the old cards up, you used to see what positions were available, and being a bit sneaky, I used to nick the cards so no one else would get it. But you don't have that option anymore. You go online, you go through these agencies, these aren't the people that are necessarily recruiting, it's just a numbers game for them. And I think what the government needs to do is launch some sort of big scale website where employers can go to and recruit. Employers would be interested to do that because it costs about $6.5, $7 grand to recruit, someone that's on, say, 20, 23 grand. That would get that would get more people into work, which in turn would bring, the employment and, the benefit being filled down.
Yeah. Okay, Dave, thanks for that. Richard's the last caller on this, but we have much more to come. It's Richard in East Ham. Go ahead.
Hello there. First thing I'd like to say is I've got a huge amount of respect for you. I think you're an ambassador for truth, and I in everything you've done.
Thank you, Richard.
Yes, IDS, Iain Duncan Smith, the man who had £2 million house paid by us. Yes. Recently,
he did do well on his expenses, I must say.
The Independent Parliamentary Standards Authority have got a publication website where Iain Duncan Smith claimed £100 for 60 wet wipes. Oh, that's very needed. Going on to my further point is that the DWP recently, after a Freedom of Information request by researcher Anita Bellows, pointed out that 1 in 5 deaths related to benefits involve sanctions. I believe that these people who are sitting behind their desks, the little Hitlers, deciding whether people eat or whether they keep their house, are unqualified and above the law in some respects. They can just make these decisions on a whim, and suddenly someone doesn't eat.
Powerful point, Richard. Unfortunately for that subject, we've run out of time.